The harbor that witnessed his humiliation now welcomes his ships. Elijah Reeves returned to Port Haven with a weathered journal and 14 years of calculated patience. The Clinton family that once threw him into these waters now faces financial ruin, while their youngest daughter Juliet fights desperately to save what they destroyed. When a catastrophic storm exposes buried secrets and threatens countless lives, only their unlikely alliance can save the community. If you've ever wanted to witness justice and redemption collide, hit like now and ask yourself, would you risk everything to help someone who once watched you drown? Elijah Reeves was born with salt in his blood and storms in his eyes. The fishermen of Port Haven called him the Storm Witch's Boy for his uncanny ability to read the weather hours before it shifted. While other children played, he collected what the tide discarded: broken nets, weathered wood, abandoned buoys. His grandmother, the only family he had after the sea claimed his parents, taught him to see treasure where others saw trash. "The world throws away what it doesn't understand," she'd whisper, guiding his small hands to repair salvaged items. "Your gift is seeing value where others see nothing." By 16, he developed a reputation for predicting dangerous weather and repairing equipment the wealthier fishermen discarded. The harbor was divided: working families who respected his skills, and the Clintons who owned the docks, the processing plant, and most of the town. The annual Harbor Festival became his undoing. He'd brought his journal of designs, innovative rescue equipment sketched in meticulous detail. Richard Clinton, heir to the family fortune, found Elijah showing his drawings to a boat captain. The journal was ripped from his hands, pages mockingly read aloud to gathering crowds. Listen to the garbage collector who thinks he can design ships. Richard's laughter cut deeper than any storm wind. Maybe he needs to test his rescue equipment personally. Strong hands seized him. Through a blur of faces, he saw Juliet Clinton, Richard's younger sister, step forward then freeze, her protest dying on her lips. The splash of harbor water swallowed his scream as they threw him in, his precious journal following moments later. That night, soaked and shivering, he salvaged the waterlogged pages and made a vow. He left Port Haven at 18 with nothing but that salt-stained journal and his grandmother's final wisdom: build something they can't break. 14 years dissolved like salt in the tide. The boy who left returned as Elijah Reeves, the reclusive billionaire founder of Horizon Rescue, a global maritime emergency response company whose innovative vessels saved thousands in coastal disasters. His fleet used technology he designed in that very journal, perfected through years of obsessive work. Meanwhile, Juliet Clinton returned to Port Haven with an environmental science degree and a mission to repair what her family had damaged. Estranged from Clinton wealth, she ran a struggling marine conservation nonprofit, fighting corporate exploitation of coastal communities, including, increasingly, her own family's reckless management. She carried two secrets: a piece of sea glass Elijah had once given her during a moment of childhood kindness, and the weight of her silence the day they broke him. The announcement came without warning. Horizon Rescue proposed building an emergency response center on contested harbor land, the same shoreline where the Clintons had been dumping waste for decades. The town hall buzzed with tension as residents packed wooden benches. Juliet stood at the microphone, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "This harbor has been exploited by corporations that take what they want and leave us with empty promises and poisoned waters," she said. "Horizon Rescue presents itself as our savior, but their proposal gives them control of our last undeveloped shoreline." From the back of the room, Elijah watched her. He'd prepared for this moment, studied her career, read every paper she'd published on sustainable coastal management. When she finished, he moved forward. The room quieted as he approached the microphone. He'd registered for the meeting under his middle name, Alexander, a common practice to avoid the attention his full identity attracted. "Miss Clinton makes valid points about corporate exploitation," he began, "but she neglects to mention that her own research on adaptive harbor management demonstrates that properly designed emergency response centers actually improve coastal resilience." Juliet's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Few people had read that obscure journal article. "In fact," he continued, "page 47 of your study specifically states that integrated rescue operations with environmental monitoring capabilities provide dual protection for vulnerable coastal communities. Their eyes locked across the room. Challenge met with challenge. "I've read your proposal, Mr. Alexander," she countered. "Your company's design includes no environmental monitoring systems." A slight smile touched his lips. "Check Appendix C, which was added yesterday. You'll find detailed plans for water quality sensors, marine life monitoring stations, and a community data access portal, all designed according to specifications in your most recent paper." The meeting adjourned with the council promising to review the expanded proposal. As people filed out, Juliet approached him, determination in every step. "Nobody quotes my research back to me, Mr. Alexander, and nobody designs environmental monitoring systems that precisely match my specifications without an agenda. What's yours?" Up close, she noticed a thin scar along his wrist, partially visible beneath his watch. "Perhaps I simply recognize good science when I see it," he replied. "Or perhaps Port Haven matters to me for reasons beyond business." 3 days after the town meeting, Elijah stood on the eastern pier at dawn, watching the horizon with a focus that bordered on communion. The air felt wrong, too dense, too sweet. Most wouldn't notice for hours, but he recognized the warning signs embedded in his bones since childhood. A dangerous storm was forming, one that wouldn't appear on weather reports until it was bearing down on them. He pulled out his phone, calling the harbor master directly. "This is Alexander from Horizon. You need to issue a warning to all vessels. There's a squall forming offshore, likely to hit within 5 hours." The harbor master laughed. "Sky's clear, Mr. Alexander. National Weather Service shows nothing but sunshine today. Trust me, this one's coming fast and hard. Look, we appreciate your company's interest in our town, but the Clintons have managed this harbor for generations. Richard Clinton himself just cleared 15 boats for deep water fishing. I'm not calling them back on some billionaire's hunch." Elijah began making calls to his own team, positioning emergency resources just outside town. As he worked, he didn't notice Juliet watching from the harbor cafe. Something about his certainty drew her outside. "Preparing for something, Mr. Alexander? There's a storm system developing. It'll hit Port Haven hard, probably around noon." She glanced at the clear sky. "Every forecast shows clear weather today." Forecasts are based on satellite data and computer models. They miss things. "And you don't." Her tone was skeptical, but not dismissive. Instead of answering, he pointed toward a distant patch of horizon. "See that haze? The way it's slightly darker than the surrounding sky. And the gulls, notice they're flying inland instead of out to sea." She followed his gaze, studying what he indicated. Her scientific mind registered the anomalies he pointed out. "Your brother just sent 15 boats beyond the breakwater," he said. "If this hits as hard as I think it will, they'll be in serious trouble." He started walking toward a small dock where a weathered rescue boat was moored. "I can at least warn them. Give them time to return before it hits." "That's insane. Even if you're right, one boat can't help 15 vessels." "I can at least warn them," he replied, "unless you have a better way to convince your brother to call them back." Juliet pulled out her phone, dialing Richard's number. It went straight to voicemail. Decision made. She stepped into the boat. "I'm coming with you." As they navigated through the harbor mouth, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon, confirming his prediction. When they reached open water, Elijah raised a radio to his lips, then hesitated, looking at the approaching storm. Without thinking, he let out a distinctive 3-note whistle, high, low, high, before beginning his transmission. Juliet froze at the sound. That whistle pattern. Only one person she'd ever known used that signal, a boy from her childhood who could read storms before they broke. "That whistle," she said, voice barely audible over the strengthening wind. "Where did you learn that?" But her question was lost as the first fishing boat appeared through the gathering mist, and the radio crackled with the captain's confused response to their warning. The sky darkened to a sickly green as they reached the first fishing vessel. Wind whipped spray across the deck, and Juliet gripped the railing as their small boat rose and fell on increasingly violent swells. One by one, they reached the scattered fishing boats, each warning more urgent as the storm intensified. 12 vessels turned back toward harbor, fighting the strengthening current. But 3 boats had ventured furthest out, beyond radio range. "We need to find the Mercy and," Juliet said, rain plastering her hair to her face. "She's got the youngest crew, mostly teenagers on their first deep water run." The Mercy and was in trouble. Listing badly to one side, the small fishing vessel was taking on water as waves crashed over her bow. "They'll never make it back like that," Elijah muttered. He brought their boat alongside in a maneuver so precise it seemed impossible in the churning sea. When they reached the Mercy and, Elijah leapt across the gap between vessels with a safety line secured around his waist. The young captain, barely 20, was struggling to maintain control. "We're taking on water through the forward hold," he shouted. Elijah moved with practiced efficiency, directing the terrified crew while his hands worked to secure a temporary patch. Juliet followed, somehow anticipating his needs before he voiced them. The patch held, but the Mercy and's engine had flooded. They would need to tow her back. "We can't tow in these conditions," the young captain protested. "The line will snap." "Not if we use a fisherman's cradle," Elijah replied, already working with rope from his emergency kit. Juliet watched in growing astonishment as his fingers wove an intricate knot system she hadn't seen since childhood. A technique unique to Port Haven's oldest fishing families, nearly forgotten now. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. "That's a Port Haven heritage knot. My father said only a dozen people still knew how to tie it properly." His eyes met hers briefly. "My grandmother taught me." If this revelation moved you, hit like now and tell us in the comments. Would you have the courage to help those who once hurt you? Subscribe to witness what happens when pride meets redemption in the storm-tossed harbor of second chances. 2 days after the rescue, Juliet made her way to the temporary office Horizon Rescue had established in a weathered boathouse. The door stood ajar, but the main room was empty. Maps covered the walls, detailed charts of Port Haven's coastline marked with annotations spanning decades. As she turned to leave, her elbow caught a shelf, sending a leather-bound book tumbling to the floor. It fell open, pages splaying across weathered boards. She knelt to retrieve it, then froze. The journal was old, its pages water-stained and rippled as though once soaked through and carefully dried. But it was the drawings that stopped her breath. Intricate sketches of rescue vessels, emergency equipment, and harbor reinforcement designs. In the margins, notes in a careful hand she somehow recognized despite the years. One page showed a detailed design for a specialized rescue boat with stabilizing outriggers, exactly like the one they'd used during the storm. In the corner, a small inscription, "For Port Haven, when I return." The date on the page, 14 years ago. "Finding what you're looking for, Miss Clinton?" She startled. Elijah stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're Elijah Reeves," she finally said. "The boy from the harbor. The one they threw in," he completed quietly. "Yes. These designs. Your company. Everything you've built, it all started here." He moved to the window, looking out at the harbor. "Necessity breeds innovation. I had nothing when I left except those drawings and a promise I made to my grandmother." "What promise?" "That I'd return someday. That I'd fix what was broken here." He turned to face her. "Even if they broke me first." "Why didn't you tell me who you were at the town meeting?" Would have mattered? Would the Clintons' daughter have welcomed the harbor boy they humiliated? The question stung with truth. "I'm not just a Clinton." "No," he agreed. "You're the girl who once returned my compass when your brother stole it. The only one who ever showed me kindness here." She remembered a small moment she'd thought insignificant. She'd found the compass in Richard's room and left it on his grandmother's doorstep. "But you're also the girl who stood silent when they threw me in," he continued, no accusation in his voice, just quiet fact. "I was 15, she whispered. "I was afraid. We all were." Richard Clinton discovered Elijah's true identity and threatened to release damaging information about Horizon's early operations unless Juliet convinced him to withdraw his proposal. The ultimatum hung between them: family loyalty versus doing what was right. For 3 days, Juliet avoided the harbor, the folder of accusations remaining unopened on her kitchen table. When she finally confronted Elijah about Richard's threats, he admitted the truth about his return. My grandmother owned a small piece of land here, where our cottage stood. After she died, the property taxes mysteriously tripled. The Clinton Harbor Authority claimed the land for unpaid assessments while I was away. I didn't know. No one was meant to know. Just another poor family squeezed out to make way for progress. He looked out at the water. I promised her I'd come back someday, that I'd reclaim what was ours. So this is about revenge. It started that way, he admitted. The angry boy in me wanted to buy the whole harbor just to prove I could. But somewhere along the way, it became about something else. What? Restoration. Not just of property, but of purpose. 3 days later, Richard Clinton called a special town meeting. The subject: the true identity and intentions of Horizon Rescue's founder. Port Haven deserves to know who they're really inviting into our community, Richard announced, displaying a split image of Elijah beside a grainy photograph of a teenage boy on the docks. Horizon's founder is an Alexander Reeves, the philanthropic businessman he presents himself to be. He's Elijah Reeves, the grandson of Meredith Reeves, known to many as the Harbor Witch. Richard accused Elijah of returning for revenge, pointing to property acquisitions throughout the harbor and questionable practices in Horizon's early operations. When Elijah was given a chance to respond, he acknowledged his identity but defended his intentions. My intention was never revenge. It was restoration. Port Haven's harbor infrastructure is failing. The Clinton management strategy has been extraction without investment, taking profit while allowing the community that generates it to crumble. As Richard prepared to reveal the damaging documentation, Juliet stepped forward unexpectedly. My brother gave me that same folder of accusations, she told the crowd. Unlike him, I actually researched them. She displayed official Coast Guard reports showing the salvage operation in question was fully permitted after the fact due to the emergency nature of the hurricane response. I'm defending the truth, Juliet declared when Richard accused her of betraying family. Something in short supply when it comes to Clinton dealings with this harbor. She withdrew the piece of sea glass from her pocket. I've carried this since I was 15. Elijah gave it to me after explaining how the ocean takes broken things and makes them beautiful again. The day they threw him into the harbor, I wanted to help him. I took a step forward and then stopped. I chose silence over courage, family loyalty over doing what was right. Her voice strengthened. I've regretted that choice every day since. The council voted to approve Horizon's Rescue Center proposal. As the meeting dissolved, Juliet found herself face to face with her brother. You've chosen your side, he said coldly. Don't expect the family to forget it. I'm not choosing sides, Richard. I'm choosing Port Haven. Elijah and Juliet met at his grandmother's abandoned cottage, where they spoke honestly about the past and possibilities for the future. I've carried so much guilt, Juliet admitted, about that day at the festival, about not stopping them. You were a child. So were you. She turned to face him fully. I'm sorry, Elijah, for what my family did, for my own silence. He reached across the space between them, his hand finding hers. I forgave you long ago, Juliet, maybe even before I left. Their fingers intertwined naturally, the sea glass pressed between their palms, a small, precious thing once broken, now treasured. Port Haven broke us both in different ways, he said softly. Maybe that's why we're the ones who can fix it. 1 year later, Port Haven Harbor gleamed in summer sunlight, transformed almost beyond recognition. The Horizon Rescue Center stood where derelict warehouses had once crumbled. Adjacent to it, the Clinton Conservation Institute, renamed by Juliet after separating it from family control, operated from renovated fishing sheds. After evidence of environmental violations became public, the Clinton Harbor Authority had faced substantial fines. Richard Clinton had left town rather than face potential charges, selling his remaining interests to a community trust established jointly by Horizon and the Conservation Institute. For the first time in generations, Port Haven belonged to itself. Elijah had restored his grandmother's cottage, preserving its character while making it livable again. On the back porch, he presented Juliet with 2 rings he'd crafted, handmade from silver that held pieces of sea glass set like precious stones. "The blue is from the piece you kept all these years," he explained. "The green the first found the day after the storm." "We've spent a year rebuilding this harbor," he said quietly, "creating something new from what was broken. I thought maybe we could do the same with us." The harbor boy and the Clinton daughter. Who would have thought? Juliet smiled through tears. "My grandmother, probably," he said. "She always said the tide brings back what belongs to the shore, if you wait long enough." They married on the eastern pier at sunrise, exchanging promises written on paper made from Elijah's salvage journal pages, and wearing the sea glass bands he had crafted, symbols of finding beauty in what others discard. As darkness fell and harbor lights came on, they walked hand in hand toward the cottage on the bluff. 2 people who had found each other across divides of class, history, and hurt to build something neither could create alone. The tide had brought them back to where they belonged, and this time they were staying. If this story of redemption touched your heart, like and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Tell us below, would you build a future with someone across such deep divides? Subscribe to Zenith Inspiring Stories for more journeys that prove love can heal what pride once broke.